Welcome to Breaking Ties, Destination Divorce. This is your go-to source for practical advice and support while you go through the divorce process. Join us each weekday for a quick chat where we'll cover a variety of topics such as child custody, property division, and self-care. Together, we'll explore emotional, financial, and legal aspects of divorce and help you find the best path forward for you and your family. Here's your host and Certified Divorce Financial Analyst professional, Mike Fulkerson.
Welcome to the fifth and final day of our week-long Breaking Ties interview series, where we have been talking with Marson Maynor about mortgages and the divorce process. I tell you, it's been a fantastic week, Marson. How do you think about it?
I like it, man. It's good to get the synapses firing off and testing this kind of knowledge, because this is not something that happens on an everyday basis. And but I know it's needed. It's people are not sure where to go, where they can turn, and I think you putting this out and providing a platform for them to get some answers that no judging, no nothing, man. It's just, this is what it is when you're going through this, and it's good to get the right info. So I think you're on the right track, putting some good stuff out there, man.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And I tell you, it's the information you've been provided. I mean, even I've learned a few things from your processes and how it works on your side. And cool. For those listeners who don't know, like I said, this is the fifth day. We have 4 other mortgage and divorce question and answer sessions through the previous 4 days. So go back, listen to them. You're going to get some great information. And, really, Marson's been fantastic. And for those of you who are here the first time, Marson is a loan officer with Geneva Financial and has years of experience in mortgages. And it's really showing through this interview.
Huh. You seeing lines on my face or something, man? What are you talking about? No, I'm just kidding.
No, you're looking as suave as ever.
Right
this
on,
is what
man.
day 5 has come to, huh?
Yeah. Getting squirrely.
That's right. So, all right. Things that aren't squirrely, though, are these questions we got coming up, because we got some really, really big questions here. And we're going to start it off with, how can someone remove their name from the mortgage after the divorce?
That's actually a really good question. And it's a pretty easy answer, actually. Just because you're dissolving your relationship with another person doesn't necessarily carry over to those assets that you might own together. And when it comes to a mortgage, which means you're going to have a loan against the house, creditors or lenders aren't that forgiving, if you will, because the more people that they can have on the hook or be responsible, the better chances they feel that they're going to be able to get their money paid in full, whether it's through a sale down the road or through the entire term of the loan. So they're not usually willing to just remove one of the spouses because they're getting a divorce. Like, hey, I'm not going to be living in the property anymore. We're going to sign a quitclaim deed to get me off the title, and I just can't, be responsible. Well, that's not their concern. Their concern is our mortgage going to get paid? Now, there are options to be able to do it, but just to simply call up your lender and ask them to remove doesn't hurt to try. I'm not saying not to do that, but chances are you're going to have to either sell the home or refinance, which means you need to remove that mortgage from your name. Bottom line.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's never easy. The divorce process itself is never easy. So why would mortgage process be any different?
Yeah.
Now, when we look at finalizing the divorce process, as far as the house goes, is there any way the house is used as leverage for, say, the marriage settlement agreement?
It can, from a simple fact, and this we might go down a rabbit hole with the explanation, but the thing is there's equity in a home, even though a home is a liability. It also can be an asset. It's one of those things because it does gain in value, right? So it's an asset, and the debt typically decreases as the value increases. So it can be a powerful asset to leverage during a divorce situation, because that equity could stay in the house if one of the spouses decides to stay in the home, and the other spouse that's vacating doesn't want to necessarily have any of that equity, they can use that as, hey, there's $200,000 of equity in the house. Instead of, us doing X amount in alimony or X amount in child support, which I'm not a fan of any of that. I'm not saying, I'm just saying it's all negotiable, but other assets, other like 401ks and retirement plans. I mean, it can get nuts out there with, who gets what type of thing. So the house is just a part of that. You don't necessarily, unless you need the money, you don't necessarily need to do anything with the property. Just leave the equity in the home. You're not forced unless that's part of your divorce settlement, so to speak. So
Right.
That answer the question. I know it's a little roundabout, but I want to make sure, nothing is like mandatory. It's like
Right.
everything is negotiated, It's
exactly. And so when you look at the assets, that's what this is. It gets divvied up with the rest of the assets, and it's negotiated through the attorneys for each particular client. So, but the house, like you said, it does have value.
Yeah.
Now, probably looks like our last question here. What happens if one of the spouses refuses to cooperate with the mortgage arrangements?
Well, they're going through a divorce, and there's going to be a court settlement. So the judge is going to have their final say. And if it comes down to the judge saying that one of the spouses has to do something versus not do it, that's a big part of it. But again, based on the mortgage, if one of the spouses says, "Look, I don't want the house anymore. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I want out. Buy me out, whatever," and the spouse that's retaining it cannot do it, there's nothing that can happen. That the only thing that the spouse can do is sign a quitclaim deed, which we talked in a previous session, but then that removes them from ownership of the property. And that doesn't protect them in the liability situation, because once you're no longer part of the house, trying to get any answers for the property is going to make it more difficult because you no longer own the house. So it can be a very tricky, situation when it comes to that, because there's that. Does it make sense? Yes. There's $200,000 in equity. We should just split that 50-50. But affordability is something that most things don't usually come up in. Affordability comes up in the divorce discussion, but it's from the standpoint of, are we going to be able to have enough to pay for the kids, education, food, groceries, roof over the head, all that kind of stuff. Not from the standpoint of, can I qualify to refinance or buy a new home? Like, that's not, the courts aren't going to look at that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I think I might have expanded a little too far.
It's hard not to expand when there's so many different scenarios and facets of the divorce process and how it works and functions and stuff. And so I think that's actually kind of a good way to end our week-long series, is the fact that it can go lots of different ways. There isn't one right solution for any divorce. It's going to depend on the conversations that are taking place between the two spouses getting divorced, the attorneys that are in the negotiating phase of things, and then the judge giving the final stamp of approval. So, it's just as challenging as the divorce itself when you got all sorts of debts and assets that you got to divvy up as well.
Yeah. Best thing to do is, just like, when you're contemplating, even thinking of a divorce, you hire an attorney, just like, you putting out all this great content for people to learn from. If they have those kind of assets and things, definitely talk with a financial advisor. So they do that. Home, definitely want to talk to a lender. They got to talk to their insurance agent. I mean, they've got a lot to do, and they've got to talk to all those people that they've done jointly for so long, however long they've been married, where they only needed one lender, one insurance, one financial advisor, maybe one accountant, one attorney. Now everything is doubled, and you need to have your own representation, and you need to have somebody that you trust to be able to give you that information so that you know what your next steps are. So good job for putting all this out, man. Good stuff.
Well, thanks. And hey, I want to thank you for coming on this week and sharing what you know with the listeners. Appreciate that.
It was my pleasure.
So this ends our week-long interview series. If you've not seen the previous days, I would still highly recommend you go back and take a look at those because the questions are different every day. And so Marson and I, for the last time, are signing off on the week-long series of the Breaking Ties interview. Should you have any questions for Marson, his contact information is in the description of the podcast. episode here. And keep in mind that divorce is not the end of your story. It is the start of your next great chapter. All the best, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take it easy.